As my subgenre for my music magazine is similar to Kerrang's, I decided to pastiche the layout. I chose a rock genre for my magazine, and many qualities reflect this. The masthead was the first feature of the magazine I decided to focus on. The masthead used in Kerrang is black and appears to be broken up to connote the rebellious subgenre I am using. Also, they have used black for the colour of the masthead. I have used this in my own masthead, as it reflects the stereotypical colours of the goth emo subculture, which is said by Dick Hebdige in 1979. Also in my masthead, I felt that I needed something to make it look more interesting than just a plain black masthead. I didn't want my masthead to look identical to Kerrang's, therefore I didn't use the same broken text effect that they had used, so I changed half of my title to a different colour. I used blue because my masthead mainly would be aimed at males, and blue is a stereotypical masculine colour. I then added a white outline to my masthead, which was similar to Kerrang's, because they have used a white background for their masthead, although in my masthead I felt that the masthead stood out enough for there just to have an outline. As well as this, I used the same sort of features for the straplines and cover lines. On the top of Kerrang magazine they have a black strapline with white text. I thought this was a good effect that the magazine had used, because the colours once again kept with the house style and the subgenre. It also gave the top of the magazine a better look because it breaks up the top of the page so it doesn't look plain. The cover lines for my magazine were very similar to Kerrang. On the issue of Kerrang I used the cover lines that had a background fitted around the text and a contrasting colour for the text. This made it eye-catching so it would stand out in the shop. For my cover lines I used the same effect as Kerrang and used the font Impact in white with a navy background. I chose to do this because it followed the house style whilst jumping off the page in contrast with the background. At the bottom of the page there was another banner. In Kerrang, the banner at the bottom used the names of the bands that were in the magazine. I used this effect in my magazine because it made the magazine look more appealing and professional. Again, the colours that Kerrang used were black and white, which reflected the subgenre and kept with the house style. I have used this in my magazine to create the same effect and make it stand out from the rest of the page by using a white background to contrast against the main cover image. I also used the same font Impact throughout the front cover. This was to keep with the house style and make it easy to read from a distance, as if it was on a shop shelf, for example. The final feature of my music magazine was the main cover line. On Kerrang's front cover they made the main cover line a different colour and a larger font compared to the rest of the magazine. On my main cover line I made a different colour that was slightly out of the house style to make it stand out compared to the rest of the text. I made the font and the background for the font for my main cover image black, with a grey font and the white outline. This was a contrast against the background. I still kept with the same font because the text wouldn't be easy to read otherwise. Similarly, in Kerrang magazine, the main cover image anchors a text, Bart's 1967. I used this in my magazine. I made the band Borderless Horizons the main cover image. Although looking back at my final project, I feel that the band could have stood closer together in my picture to make it look more professional, and the picture could have been in better focus. My contents page included lots of features that were taken from Kerrang magazine, again because it is aimed at the same subgenre. Firstly, I worked on the top half of the contents page. I started with a title for it. As Kerrang, I used the title Contents and put this in capital letters for emphasis. I also copied the contrasting background that they used. For example, they used yellow text on a black background, whereas I used black text on a white background. Similarly to their masthead, they added an effect that broke the text up slightly. In my version, I didn't change any aspect of this. The next thing I worked on was choosing my image to make the top half of my contents page. Like Kerrang, they had a picture. The main focus was on half of the page. I used one of my photos that were potentially going to be on my double page spread. However, I used it for my contents page as it seemed to fit with the look. By using this image, I left some space at the left-hand side of my page to put in other features. I then added in a cover line with the name of the band and the page number that their feature was on. This idea was taken from my issue of Kerrang. The next thing I did for my contents page was to make the bottom half. Across the middle of the page there was a banner stating Kerrang this week. I thought this was a good idea because it stood out and jumped off the page. The way that it was through the middle of the page made it striking. In my contents page I used this feature to make it stand out. Although the black banner stood out against the white background of the contents page, it didn't particularly stand out with the headstock masthead, although this was written in a white Impact font and this stood out. I felt that the colours I used for the banner reflected the rock subgenre, well as black and blue are the colours associated with them. To the left of the page there was a section for the editor to write about the magazine. I felt that this was a good idea to use within my magazine as it looked professional. I originally wanted to call this section Editor's Picks as a play on words, however when I redrafted my contents page it didn't fit in with the design. Therefore I used a traditional Kerrang look. I I used an image that I had taken and used this as a picture for the editor, and used a drop shadow to make it stand out like Kerrang! Underneath the editor picture there was a section of text which was a message from the editor followed by a signature. This made it look professional and personal. The idea was copied on my contents page. I wrote a message from the editor and created a signature below it, giving it a professional and personal touch. The first few words on my message from the editor were also done in larger text and a different font. This made it stand out a bit more and looked fun to read. The rest of the contents page followed a simple design which was similar to Kerrang's. They used subheadings which are a light text on a dark background to make it eye-catching. I used this on my contents page, although I made it navy blue on a background with a white outline to make it stand out and readable. I also used a drop capital on all of the subheadings to appear professional, while still keeping with the house style. The rest of the text is in the same font as the rest of the magazine. This is because it keeps with the house style and reflects the subculture, because it is in black and appears outgoing and in your face. I included a couple of pictures in my contents page to break up the text. I did this because it gave the audience a preview of what would be in the magazine. I also made an advertisement similar to Kerrang's to subscribe to the magazine, which made it professional. The final feature that I added to my contents page to make it look professional was again taken from Kerrang! I added an image of my double page spread. It gave the audience a taste of what was going to be in the double page spread. I also gave this a blue outline to keep with the house style and target audience. I used many aspects from Kerrang's double page spread and used it in my music magazine. The first thing that I tackled with the double page spread was the main image. Kerrang used a medium close-ups for their double page spread and overlapped the image onto the text. Dissimilarly, on my contents page I used a long shot. This was so I could overlap the image onto the text easily and you would get a better view of the band, which would be better because they're a new band. I also made the background for the text. I used a white box and outlined one side in red. I added an effect which gave it more depth and was interesting to look at. By doing this, it gave me a good background to work with for the text. I got the idea from Kerrang as they used a textured black background layered with white and red text. The next feature I did was the text at the top of the page. I made a graphic in Photoshop with the band's name on and added this into the top corner of my magazine. I used this idea from Kerrang as it established who the band was and if fans didn't know. I felt that this was important because they were a new band and the audience would have no idea who it was. I then created the red text at the top of the page. I used the colour because it contrasted against the black and white back photograph. I then emphasised a word in the quote to make it stand out and outlined that in the text in white to emphasise it from the background. The copy of Kerrang that I had taken it from used red text on a black background. I used another sentence under the main quote like Kerrang to give the audience more information about what the article will be about. Again I made this red as it continued with the house style and contrasted with the black and white. I made the band's name in a different colour, again to make it stand out and look more aesthetically pleasing. I then made the article for the double page spread. I used the font Arial so the text was easy to read. As well as this, I made the questions a different colour to the answer. This made it look generally better. I got both ideas from one issue of Kerrang! The final touches to my double page spread were the page numbers and quotes. I used this because it had been done in Kerrang and looked more professional.